Just describe that in the opposite direction.
Oh, but I didn't know it gets larger.
That's what expansion means. What
Right.
kind of what's with your vocabulary here?
It's me, James, with This Beautiful Crazy Life. Welcome to the channel. Oh my gosh, guys, it's been a while, but I had to discuss this because, as you guys know, the world is going crazy over one man.
Over Joe Rogan.
Track for you on the Joe Rogan front.
Apparently, Joe Rogan has the most popular podcast on Spotify.
We've been tracking the Rogan story.
Joe Rogan. How infamous is this guy, right? And it's such an interesting story. Joe Rogan has been sort of being attacked and also defended because of what people claim he's doing is spreading misinformation through about COVID and vaccines and the people he has on, but also because there's some clips of him using the N-word and appearing to make a very racist joke. He gave an apology about his use of that word. He's also explained that he's going to do better of having different people's opinions and more maybe mainstream people and more type of debates for his channel. And yet the debate rages on about Joe Rogan. And for me, I think the most interesting thing about this story, or maybe interesting is not the right word, the most frustrating aspect of this story is everyone keeps talking about it, and it's the #1 news story in the country, I believe. And that's not good. Now, what I'm not saying, it doesn't matter what Joe Rogan said. That word offends a lot of people, but people have dissected it and talked about it for almost a week now. I've never been so sick of a story, just sick of hearing about it in my life. And everyone has an opinion on whether Joe Rogan is spreading misinformation or whether Joe Rogan's a racist or not. I mean, there's a million interviews of like, let's go ask a black person if they think Joe Rogan saying the N-word is bad. You know, some of my favorite YouTubers, especially on the Christian side, have all gave their view, and you know, Jordan Peterson has made remarks. Even the former President Trump has made a remark about this, and even the White House press secretary have made statements about freaking Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan, a comedian who's into MMA and deer meat.
Just describe that in the opposite direction.
Oh, but I didn't know it gets larger.
That's what expansion means. What
Right.
kind of what's with your vocabulary here?
But saying that it gets you orgasmic, that's a strange thing to say.
Well, that's just what I want. I wanted to find out because you're really bright, and I thought you would figure it out.
To me, this highlights a problem with our media landscape, because Joe Rogan is the largest corporate media person there is. I did say corporate media. When you are paid $100 million to be on Spotify, you are as corporate as it gets. Everyone is talking about this, and I just think, is this actually helpful for the discourse of our country? Now, some people might say, James, this is definitely about free speech and censorship. And look, I think there's a lot of conversation for us to have in society. Should a platform that pays someone to do a certain job, what is the control they should have over the media that is put out? Since basically the inception of radio, we have been talking about this in some form or another. What is the role of private businesses and free speech? And how does society decide what's acceptable and not acceptable? Is it really a free-for-all? Is it not a free-for-all? What is the principle of free speech? Is it only when the government's involved, or do private entities and the public have a sway? And you're going to have a million different opinions, and I love debate, and I think we should have debate, and that's part of being a free society. But at the same time, we have some other issues that seriously need coverage, and the media's not covering it. And why is that? Well, I think you guys know what the answer is, right? Money. It's not like some huge conspiracy. Money is the factor. People are interested in watching things that have simple narratives, that get people riled up. If you use the word like COVID misinformation, that has a lot of different people feeling a lot of different ways. And depending on where you are on the political side, you have very strong opinions on this idea of what is considered misinformation. I was recently watching a debate from a YouTuber/streamer named Vosh. He considers himself, I believe, a leftist libertarian, which is a political philosophy of like, we want the government to do stuff, but make sure, like, basically leave me alone and let me have my personal liberties and marry who I want and stuff of that line there. And he had a very interesting debate with Michaela Peterson. It was more like a conversation debate, and they discussed critical race theory. Michaela asked a bunch of questions because she didn't seem to be very informed on the topic, and then he answered it because he's done a lot of reading on critical race theory. And it was a really fascinating hour and a half. But how many people are actually going to watch something like that? It's long formed, it's very nuanced, it's very like hard to understand. Instead of just something like critical race theory is bad, or critical race theory teaches us the real history, and we have like these snappy remarks and it's very quick and flashy, just like the media likes, and those things are more interesting. This was an hour and a half, maybe almost 2-hour conversation on a very complex philosophical legal thought that, is it spreading across the country? Is it not? I mean, most Americans are debating critical race theory and don't actually know what it is. People say they want to be informed and they want a media to do investigative journalism and deep dives, but honestly, those don't do super well. I mean, every once in a while, you'll have like some one-off interview that just blows up and is deep and philosophical. But for the most part, people watch things to sort of reaffirm what they're already believe or what they're looking for, and most conversations aren't really that deep or interesting, right? People aren't interested in deep dives into topics that are hard to understand and nuance and don't have an easy solution, because those are hard. I'm gonna give you guys one last example to sort of prove my point here. I was watching Breaking Points, which mostly does political commentary, and I like a lot of it. I mean, I have my own biases, and both Crystal and Sagar kind of share my anti-authoritarian and anti-establishment sentiments. You know, I like to consider myself a populist with some conservative leanings, with some, little bit of dabbling in Marxism. I mean, I just like all sorts of political philosophy, but I think my main political philosophy is like, screw the power system. And they really play into that well, because that sort of seems to be their main ideology. So a lot of people are towards that, and that's a bias I have. But they recently did an interview about college and if people should have free access to college. And they had a conservative view of why college isn't everyone and a leftist view why college isn't for everyone. Like, both of these two positions both don't think that the government and us as society should be pushing college for everyone, but had different ideas on how to solve the issue of basically, how do you get people into the middle class? How do you help people who should be in college be there? How do you give people other options? It was like an 18-minute interview, and it was super interesting, but it left me like, I actually don't know how I feel about this. There were some things I liked on the conservative end, some things I didn't. Some things I liked on the leftist end, some things I didn't. And I didn't really come to a conclusion on how I felt about how we should view college and what the right step is. Because it was interesting. I would really need to read both their books and actually try and understand it. But the kind of interview that would probably do way more better would be something much more combative on, like, is Joe Rogan a racist and why do they want to cancel him? That's going to do better views than whether should we be promoting college and how should we do that? And let's have a long form interview and discuss this very complex idea. That's hard to do. And so instead of blaming the media for the way our landscape is and what's being investigated and what's being invested in, I think it's time that we as a society take personal responsibility and say, the reason it's like this, the reason this is the main focus is because we want that. Hey guys, thanks for watching my channel here. If you're new here, make sure to like and subscribe and check out my other videos. I have some really cool videos. Like this video here, this one's pretty cool. It's my video where I review the trailer for God's Not Dead 4. If you guys didn't know that, I'm a Christian and I usually like to do a lot of like political commentary, but sometimes I do religious commentary or Bible studies. It's just all over the place. So if you're interested in just having many different points of view and cool conversations where I try to be nuanced but also explain my very strong opinion, check it out and I'll see you guys later.